Welcome to the Level Design Podcast. In this episode, we go postal and delve into the mysterious happenings of Black Mesa with level designer Oli Curtis. Let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to the Level Design Podcast, and we're back once again in this beautiful summer. Joining me is Johnny Wilson. Hello, Johnny. How are you keeping, sir?
Keeping well. It's like you call it summer, but I probably disagree with you right now.
Yeah.
I was running the other day and it was running into gale force winds. I was basically standing still. It wasn't fun.
It's just resistance training. I mean, you don't have to pay for the elastic bands to be like holding you back.
Not what I'm looking for. I like to move, not be like this along the seafront. But when you're coming back, it's quite fun.
Oh, yeah.
You've been pushed.
Yeah. I've noticed that in beaches, like we were like, I don't know, we were in Norfolk or something. It's like, we're walking down the beach going like, oh, this is a nice, really lovely walk. And then you come back and it's like, it's so hard to get back. But yeah, but that's
like the mechanic in Death Stranding, where you had
yeah,
to
right.
and you had to balance yourself.
Yeah.
But in real.
Exactly.
It's real life, yeah.
Yeah. But this is what you used to, isn't it, Valentina? And Valentina Chrysostomos, another host on the show, who is in windy Edinburgh, I presume.
Yeah. We haven't had a lot of wind recently, thank God. So it's been more. It's been warm, but also strange because it super randomly rains. In the morning, it will be so sunny and nice, and then suddenly, like within minutes, it will be storming and raining, and it will stop. But it's still warm. So it's a bit confusing.
That's the main thing.
Well, yeah, so at least it's warm.
Yeah. So you're getting all the weather patterns in one day, but at least it's warm. Yeah.
But at least it's warm. Yeah, so you can go out in the rain and you don't need to wear like a jacket. So it's fine.
And joining us from the other end of England is the lovely Oli Curtis, joining us from Dartmoor.
Dartmoor, mate.
Is it deepest, darkest Dartmoor?
Oh yeah, middle of nowhere, where the rain turns sideways because of just how intense it can get up here. But that is summer for us here, so it's no different really.
All right, I see. So it's like, oh well, that's summer, that's winter. How do you know the difference?
Well, I mean, they just kind of blend in. One's like got colder rain, I guess, at some point, but
Yeah. But who's measuring when it's that disgusting, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But I mean, this is a good incentive to stay home and make awesome levels.
Exactly.
And you've been doing this. You've had let me just rewind for a second. My introduction to level design was literally making levels for Half-Life, because we played it in the office, and I decided to, the thing that you always do is recreate your office in a Half-Life level. And I think the editor was Hammer at the time. I can't remember. I don't think we'd gone to Source.
Yeah.
Then it must have been Hammer, and that's kind of where I got my start of doing stupid levels that and it's the balancing of like, hey Mark, do you want to play like Half-Life? Network Half-Life. I'm a bit busy making levels for it.
Yeah. Yeah. But you do tend to. Even saying that, I think that sometimes is more fun with especially with especially with like Source. You tend to get lost in level design because with Hammer now, the editor it's very broken, it's old, it's buggy, but you can still get lost in just how the tools work, right? Because you guys know, you're probably working with Unreal Engine at the moment. Level design tools are quite scarce in it compared to something like Hammer is, where it's quite easy to just kind of conjure up these brushes out of a void, in like mere seconds and have them textured and ready to go. And you do kind of get lost in it. I know I have anyway.
Yeah, no, it feels like a more flow version. I mean, and I haven't worked in AAA, so I don't know of many other tools out there apart from. There's a tool for Unity, and I think they've pulled it into the engine that is kind of similar to Hammer, a little bit more. It's like you're more extending a box, and you can make a level quite easy. Pro Builder, I think that was it. Yeah. It's been a while, but yeah, like Unreal Engine. Yeah, sure, you can do landscapes, you can do big things, But it's not a level design tool. I mean,
No.
it gives you brushes, but then they fight you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's annoying as well, because when I have to work at the art college in Plymouth teaching students there about level creation and the tools that they have available to them in Unreal, it's like it gets to the geometry tools and they're like, oh, okay, so can I build my entire level out of this? It's like, I mean, if you want to spend the whole entire semester bashing your head against the screen, sure, why not? Go for it.
Yeah. The geometry tools are really also very performance heavy. I remember working with them. The more you add, I'm not sure why, but it's very, very performance heavy. Like drop my frame rate, and it was just that in the scene, right? You could start creating level, and so I haven't worked with camera before, so I'm kind of interested in knowing like why is it a better level design tool? What does it have that's like making your life easier, basically, as a level designer?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, my background from like level design always stemmed from drawing like top-down designs and stuff, because that's just how I was like playing games when I was younger, was always in 2D. So I was always like seeing levels as a 2D sort of like design. And then we get to like, people say like architects drawing levels on, the buildings on graph paper.
Right.
So you have this very grid-like layout, and I have a friend who, I've got a bit of backstory to this, but it will make sense to me. I had a friend whose father was like an architect who worked for like this building firm, and he always gave us graph paper to like draw in. So just the idea of drawing basic geometrical shapes, which anyone will be able to do, but then using graph paper to be able to like place it around, feels very natural. You're doing something that you already know how to do. You can draw a square. It might be a terrible square, but you can draw a square. And if you do it with graph paper, it's a lot easier to do because you've got lines to follow. Hammer kind of takes the same approach. Like it has a 3D viewport, but most of the creation is done in the 2D. Like, so you have a top, you have a left, you have a front. You can switch them to like back, bottom, whatever. But all the brushes are created in that space. So you can create like a block or a rectangle. It's mostly just squares and cylinders, really. I mean, there are other shapes, but they can get a bit buggy.
Other shapes are available.
Other shapes are available, yeah. But yeah, so so you can create very quickly, like say a room. Just a couple of brushes will just create a room, and then using something like the texture tool, you can literally just select the face. So I could literally look at this wall and be like, you know what, I don't want it to be a white wall anymore. I want it to be like a brick wall, or I want it to be a wall covered in trash. And it's just a case of just applying the texture to it. I say it like this, and it's taken like 2 or 3 minutes to explain, but the process itself happens in like 5 seconds. It's incredibly quick. And I think that's something I miss with an engine like Unreal Engine 4, because with Unreal Engine 3 and UDK, we still had geometrical tools. They used like the additive and subtractive systems, but they were still there. They still worked pretty well. You could prototype levels up pretty quickly. It was the same sort of idea that Hammer uses. You had the viewport split into 4, which you can still do with Unreal now, but it made more sense back then, because you could use those spaces to then create your geometry and then quickly bash together a prototype level.
And the texturing as well was, and please tell me if I'm wrong, because I have fuzzy memories of this. You could put textures there and they'll line up a lot easier than, for example, what you'd be doing in Unreal. Like you spend a lot more time moving stuff around to make sure that the textures appear. And then you could like kind of partition the BSPs along wherever that texture had a natural bump or something, and you can put it out. And so, for example, if you did like, I don't know, how can I explain it? Like a column that in fact all of the faces would look the same, you could very quickly make them look like proper, rather than a repetition of the face. It's difficult to describe on an audio and even kind of on a video with my hands, but it just made it a lot easier. So you could get this a different workflow, which is a level designer is putting it all together compared to like, and now we pass it over to the environment artist, which is much more.
I guess it's just letting you do more within the editor. So like instead of needing that back and forth between artist to 3D Max to back into editor, you can do a lot more of it from within the tool itself instead. So you're kind of streamlining that pipeline, right?
I see. Okay.
And it's you have to like remember, like, so I speak of Hammer now in 2021. We use Hammer on Operation Black Mesa and Guard Duty, but we're in a lucky position that being a Source Engine licensee, we've been able to kind of like fix some of the issues it inherently has. So changing things from it being a 32-bit editor to a 64-bit, so it doesn't like leak all your memory everywhere, so it doesn't like hang up when you try to open up the texture browser and stuff. But it's an editor that's been around since the 90s. Like Mark, you said you were making levels for it with it in, you know, for the original Half-Life, which was 1998. You know, and that was Worldcraft, and now it was still
Make me feel oldie things.
I was exactly the same. I was doing it in my bedroom, but it's the same editor from then. So it's in a way it's kind of giving a kind of look back into how sort of centralized everything was with these editors. You know, it wasn't just, you know, Worldcraft and Half-Life. You had things like Quake and Radiant editors were doing exactly the same. You know, it was all kind of contained inside one, because you don't really have, I mean, you had 3D modelers, you know, you had people creating like assets like that for the environment, but it wasn't like on a massive scale like we have now, where a lot of the, you know, we have these environmental artists who will, you know, take it upon themselves to build up, you know, the world around you, and, you know, create all these fantastic assets for you to build up. It was all done inside this editor with blocks and shapes and, you know, and it was just trying to find ways to kind of almost cheat the system to make your blocks look better than the other person's blocks, and, you know, get a better looking texture.
That is why Hammer is like I don't know, I'm trying to find a word, a better, I'm just gonna say better level design, like tool or engine, rather than say Unreal and Unity, because it focused, like you said, now we have so many assets and that kind of is passed on to the environment art team, right? Whereas before you were focusing on making the levels and they didn't have much in them apart from like a few assets. So the important thing back then was to like make the levels be fun. So do you think that could be a reason why Hammer is easier to use and create levels? Is that the focus was different when they were building it?
Yeah, I mean, it's because I mean now, like, you know, I've been using Unreal Engine 4 since it launched, and there's still aspects of it that I don't understand, or, you know, I still learn about now. You know, it's just the nature of the industry that we're in. But with Hammer, it was all contained in one editor. You didn't really have to stray too far from it. You know, you didn't have to learn a, you know, 3ds Max, or I think it was like soft image milk tools or XSI tools or whatever it was at the time to make 3D models, which was like a free software at the time.
Lightwave was another one, I think.
Yeah. And, you know, I think Blender was just getting its start when like the Source engine came out or whatever. It was like getting a bit of an adoption from people, but it was like you never had to stray too far. So it was all contained inside this one editor. So everything that you had to learn, like, so like level creation, texture application, lighting, map, like it's called like map IO, but it's literally just map scripting. You know, it's all within inside this one tool, you know. So it's almost like going back to when, you know, people would set up like their ZX Spectrum or a Commodore 64, and they'd literally just have the one machine to be able to create everything that they wanted in their bedroom, make a game out of it. It's the same sort of idea there. It's just everything's inside one editor. You're not having to stray too far. So because you're more focused than that one editor,
and the play cycle, I don't think it was that slow. Like, if you wanted to play that level, like, I mean, now in Unreal, you just press the play button and you can start it. But tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you could do something very similar. You could literally be in the level in a few seconds. Yeah,
you could just hit F9. It would compile. I mean, obviously on the scale that we're on now, you know, and I know other, like, there's mod teams out there doing what we're doing, you know, obviously with the free public version. But, you know, levels now that are created in the engine are battling the limits. So we are kind of rinsing the system, and it's taking a long time. But Joe Blogg's picking up the editor, making their bedroom, their office. Hit F9, and in like less than a minute, you might be playing around in it. You know, it was nice and quick, and I think it was also because the viewport, although it's not like what we consider now as what you see is what you get with Unreal, where it's like real time and everything. For the time, seeing your creation in 3D in this viewport and be able to kind of like understand the space you were creating out of the void, you know, it was very instantaneous. You know, you were seeing it there. You know,
you have to remember as well at this time, you didn't have this idea of like real time 3D graphics. You had you know, you had games, which were real time with 3D graphics, but you rendered stuff in 3ds Max, so you'd see everything in wireframe, and then you'd press F9 or whatever in 3ds Max, and it would start rendering the image for you to see it. But like in Hammer, you could pretty much see it and kind of run it. Wanted to just have a quick chat about Black Mesa. So, is this the Black Mesa, the Half-Life 2?
No. So there's this is Black Mesa, which is made by Crowbar Collective, which is a global team of developers. You know, and they're a global studio now, and they have been since I think it's about 2005. So they've got some time behind doing the whole remote working thing, and they're pretty good at it now. We are Tripmine Studios, so we create Operation Black Mesa and Guard Duty. So Black Mesa is I have to say this correctly, otherwise I always get people like bombarding me. It's a reimagining of Half-Life. So it's not a one-to-one recreation. It's a reimagining using modern tools. And we're in the same boat. So we are reimagining Half-Life Opposing Force and Half-Life Blue Shift, that with the expansions for Half-Life. Using modern tools. And although I think we spent a lot more time trying to be a bit more faithful to the original source material, obviously there are times where you do have to take that source material and kind of take some artistic twists with it. Do you know what I mean? Because although it was great design for the 90s and what we had back then, right now some of the, not necessarily the level design, it's the environmental lore of the place doesn't quite work out, and you have to find a balance between the level design layouts that you were given from that original spec and not straying too far that returning players don't know where the hell they are, but also cater to like making sense for newer players who might not really have played Half-Life and
be fairly forgiving of the limitations.
I guess with like you said, it's a reimagining, and it sounds like you're taking the original levels. Obviously, you're using the same tools, so I assume that makes that a little bit easier. Like you're trying to like stay as close to that level of familiarity, so returning players in theory will recognize it, but like also catering towards that new audience as well. Like, is there anything you guys have had to like drastically do or like redo to kind of either maintain that, or you've just not physically not been able to do for any particular reason?
So this is a really good point, because there's a chapter I'm involved in, which I lead, which is called Missing in Action, which is an opposing force, and it's pretty early on. It's like the second or third chapter. And the reason why my chapter's taken so long is just because of how bad some parts of the level design is for the area, and how it doesn't really work for the rest of the game. And this is not like a sentiment that we hold. I think it's normally a chapter that if you can skip a bit, you will. It's
really?
Yeah.
What makes it bad in your opinion?
So this is another thing. It's having to rely on community reception as well with this, because obviously the Half-Life series is a very, very beloved game with some very, very passionate fans. So the reason
there's going to
why
be loads of opinions, so I think here you're free to say that these are your opinions and not of your employer. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, definitely. These are all my opinions, and I think a lot of people will know that because I have spoken about it at length on my on previous points. But it's so Black Mesa as a facility. Although it's a fictional facility, does have some groundwork in how a facility of that size would maybe operate. Not like one-to-one true, but it's like some parts will make more sense. Like you wouldn't have a blast furnace next to an office space, stuff like that. But that's the problem with missing in action. That takes place. It's that jumble of areas. Like although they've tried to make it interesting, and it's a very sort of like level where you're trying to get away from the surface to escape, and you're considered, like the title says, everyone expects you to be dead, so you're just trying to find a way out. There's a couple of NPCs and enemies that are introduced in this chapter as well, so the environments had to kind of shift around to be able to introduce them properly. But at the end of it, you have about 4 maps which are just very hodgepodge, duct taped together, and they will like it.
Right.
And for the rest of the game to kind of have that chapter in there, a lot of works had to take place in order to, again, find a balance of not turning away returning players and not making it so that, if you're a new player, you've got a clue what's going on, so it's been a very sort of juggling act, and I'm very thankful to the team who've been there along the step, like every step of the way, where if someone gets an idea, we kind of chat about it probably for like weeks on end, sometimes like just constantly making small little adjustments, trying to make things fit in better. And I'm happy to say now, we have a better idea of how this area actually serves the not just like the area that it sits in, but like the game overall, like how these NPCs kind of evolve from this one area that they're in. So, but it has been challenging. It has been challenging.
I think it's really fascinating because you see it a lot now, right? There's a lot of remakes in the industry, or reimaginings, I guess, is like more of the case. And you're always going to have the old audience, right? But like the part of your job with doing this kind of stuff, it's to bring that new generation into a franchise that could have been dormant for so long as well. And I find it's a fascinating balancing act. And it's just like, but you have a lot of people can look at it one way. You have the blueprints for how this game should work, right? It's like, no, I have the blueprints for how the game worked in the 90s. I don't have the blueprints of how it would work as a modern game today. And I think there's fascinating articles and talks that can come out of all of this stuff.
I think it's really difficult actually reimagining a game. I would say just as difficult as making a new IP, because you have to please people who've already played the game. You have to kind of respect the franchise. You also kind of have to respect how the gameplay itself. So even though maybe Resident Evil 2 fixed camera or something like that, tank controls might not work now, they existed and kind of like coexisted with everything else in a specific way. So you kind of have to use that. You have to understand the source material and respect what it was trying to do and kind of like recreate that in a modern way. And then you also have to bring in new players. So it's like there's all this stuff happening at the same time, and I think it's really difficult. And like we can see with the Resident Evil franchises, they're reimagining the Resident Evil 2, 3 now. It's just a very hard balance to find, right? There's a lot of people have a lot of opinions about the games, right? Because of this reason.
I think a lot of the time is it's paying the lip service to the original players, which is important because that's going to be your big audience. But I think maybe, and this is like I'm happy to change my mind on this. The other goal is to get new players into this, right? It's like leaving a legacy of going like, right, because you've seen how much has changed from the tank controls and stuff like that from whatever the 90s and early 2000s. What's going to happen in 10 years time when people are playing these reimagined games? They don't have any of the subsequent language of saying like, well, this is insane, now we do things in VR and this makes no sense, you know. Do you know what I mean? It's like either you modernize it and just pay some lip service, but you do like, this is what's right for now. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like
no. I think it's a valid point to make, to be honest, because you are totally right. In 10, 15 years, you know, if people are, you know, still going back to say Operation Black Mesa, and you know, they're like, well, this just doesn't make sense. This doesn't make any sense because it was based on a game in the 90s. I mean, there is definitely points where you have to. There have had to be difficult positions we've had to take where we're like, no, this just is not going to work. Like we'll keep in like the original lore stuff maybe as lip service, you know, maybe like a guard, you know, dies in the area and you like his last point of contact or something. We'll keep that in, but everything else has to change because otherwise it's just going to break. You know, because it's not just about keeping that level layout. You have to take in, you know, anything you would as a level designer, how you're going to flow for the environment, how it's all pacing, you know, and then you have to start working with things like the sound designer. Is you got any stems that are going to come in because there's another moment coming up ahead where you like, you know, run into some like attack helicopter coming after you or something. Do you know what I mean? There's all those factors. So you still have to take it as, you know, is this going to be the correct choice? You can't just keep it in for the sake of keeping it in because it was a game that you are reimagining. There are times where you are like, well, hate to do this, but we're going to have to just cut it and go with something else. And that has, it's sad to say, that has happened once or twice with us. You know, but it's something we want, you know, we have been documenting this entire time. So one of our things that we do is we do these media releases like twice a year. We do give some insight into like how we work via them. We also do these like developer blogs, and hopefully we'll be doing Twitch streams soon. So you can get some bigger insight. But one thing that we've made sure to do is always catalog anything that's changed internally, away from, you know, just, you know,
from canon.
Anything, from canon. I mean, it's because it's tough. Like it's because obviously Opposing Force was always meant to be an expansion to happen, but Blue Shift was meant to happen for the Dreamcast. So it's always been this kind of I want to say like a black sheep scenario, but it's not. It's not even that really. It's like it was never meant to be around. It was always kind of like this expansion that was never meant to be, because it just never came out on the Dreamcast, and then Gearbox kind of like managed to somehow shunt it up onto the PC and release with it. It was the HD model pack, which everyone hates. Everyone hates this HD model pack. So we've also kind of had to pay some lip service to the HD model pack by giving you the option to change, because they changed some of the weapons. So now we've had to like kind of go, well, you can change between these weapons as well in the settings if you want. Do you know what I mean?
Up to you if you are that suicidal.
Yeah.
One of the models, so going back to my Half-Life 1 days, there was one guy that we used to play and he cheated. He got himself a Kermit the Frog model in multiplayer. So the hitbox is about this big compared to everybody's massive hitbox.
There's always one in there.
Yeah, and like for ages I didn't understand it, and then like that's where I learned about hitboxes. So when anyone talks about hitboxes to me, in I'm always thinking of Kermit the Frog, and now you'll know why I have strange analogies.
Not the worst example to have when you want to explain a hitbox. Just bring Kermit out. It's fine.
Yeah, it's like you got Kermit that's this big and a human being that's this big. He played, so we used a lot of trip mines on him because there we go. But one thing that so for recent viewers, Oli and I know each other for a few years now. You changed your job. Like we've had talked to many people on this podcast about how did you get into games, you know, and how do you do that? And they all said, well, I studied, I then applied for some jobs, I got a job at a AAA studio, and now I'm the director of that AAA studio. This happens to everyone, by the way. If you're starting game design, that's literally
just how it happens.
That is just
That's how it's exactly how it happens.
That's exactly the lineage that you get. But yours was slightly different, I believe. Because you have been doing like level design, like as you say, at home. I mean, we've all been doing level design at home. But...
Yeah, I was a bin man. I picked up, and it wasn't just like any old bin job either. Because of where we are in the southwest, you can't have wheelie bins, so it was all black bag pickup, like with your hands, chucking it into the back of a dust cart for 10 hours a day. 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week. If it was holiday season, you had to catch up on bank holidays. And I did that, like on and off for like 10 years.
And then you became a level designer and a director of a company.
It's another linear progression.
Yeah.
It was weird because I did the university thing, right? Mm-hmm. I went to Plymouth College of Art. It was Plymouth College of Art and Design then, and I did a degree in design for games.
Okay.
And
so far so standard.
Yeah, standard. Mm-hmm. And then I basically graduated, and I instantly went into volunteering at Develop.
Oh, right.
Which is where I met a lot of people I know now, like Ellen and Johnny, and and then eventually you. But I met you on the year that I stopped being a conference associate. That's the thing.
Oh, right. Okay.
So yeah, I volunteered for years at Brighton Develop, and I was constantly meeting people. But shortly after I graduated, it was I had like an interview lined up for Rocksteady Studios, who were working on like the Batman games at the time. And I remember having a design test, like a level design test. They wanted to be like me to like remake a Gotham subway or something. And it was at that point that I was having to move, and I was my girlfriend, who's now my wife, was pregnant at the time. And I was like, I've got to put this on pause. I've got to get money. I've got to do it because I can't just hope to get a job at Rocksteady. So I had to bite the bullet, and I had to get a job as a bin man, and I did that, on and off for 10 years. So, but I wouldn't change it. Would not change any of it, not for 1 second.
That's what your t-shirt says right now.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Now I got this.
Your mantra.
Yeah, exactly. It's because at the end of the day, it was never like, oh man, I'm a bin man. It was always like, it was a great job, and I met some really fantastic, funny, interesting characters while doing it, and they were really interested in what I did, as a spare time thing. But at the end of the day, it was just ends to means. Like, I had to get money, therefore that was the way to get money. And then when I got home, I could work on whatever. So yeah, sometimes that's just the way it is. But it's never a case of like, well, I'm doing this now, so I might as well give up. It's just use it as fuel. That's what I did. It's just like, yeah, I'm a bin man now, but come a year, I might be able to get into like the next round as like summer job, jobs that come up and what have you. And
it's one of those things that I see. I mean, again, this is not the whole world. This is Twitter. A lot of people say, I'm an aspiring level designer, or an aspiring this, or an aspiring that. It's like, be that. That's what you do, just because you're not being paid for it right now.
Yeah.
Do that. That's what you are. If you're aspiring to be it, either practice it or I could be an aspiring astronaut, but if I'm doing nothing about it, I'm not aspiring astronaut. Take the, so whatever we've done in life is like, and I don't mean that in a like dark, mysterious thing, but is be what you want to be, right? It's like you've been, and enjoy the moment of whatever you're doing, because otherwise, that's a really horrible situation if you're not enjoying what you're doing, right? So you got to try and enjoy what you're doing, and see it for what it is at that time in your life.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was like, I've had the same thing happen with a friend of mine recently who's, he's had to move out of a place he was living in, and now he's having to like save up again, and he's had to get a job, that he's outside of his, he's a musician. He's a pretty successful musician in the area, but he's had to get a day job. Do you know what I mean? To get enough money to be able to move to a new place. And it was just, you're having to take a job that you don't want to do. It sucks, but at the end of the day, use it as a means to an end. You're getting that money. You're not going to do it forever, because at the same time, you still have passion for what you want to do. And what I tend to find is when I was working away, getting covered in God knows what had like split open in a black bag that day, is I couldn't wait to get home and just work on levels. Yeah, that passion got even more like intense, like the more I went down that road. So but you should never define yourself like that. If you're gonna have to take a job, just do it. Just be like, look, I need this money, I need to survive, I'm only human, but I want to do this. So
I mean, you were destined to become a level designer though, weren't you? It's like, or a game developer. What was the first thing you heard in your mind, or like in this, as you entered this world?
Nothing.
No? Was it not like a hospital word?
I was, I was born slightly deaf.
Oh, really?
I say slightly deaf.
Oh,
I was born pretty much deaf. I had, so there's a condition where like it's glue ear, which is where your ears produce too much wax. Mine had caused so many infections that my eardrums were damaged as well. So I didn't hear anything. And I used to kick things if I wanted it, apparently, according to my mum. So I finally got this. I had this operation like planned for ages. I kept getting sick. I kept getting the flu. In and out of hospital with my mum. Finally get to this date at this hospital called Freedom Fields, which isn't there anymore in Plymouth. I think it's like a housing commune place now, which is still called Freedom Fields, which is kind of nice. Yeah.
Houses just pop.
Just make way for houses. But yeah, so I had this. I was put on the children's ward, and when I got there, I was still like coming off the last like cold I had, so I didn't really pay attention to what was happening. And then I had this operation where they cleared it all out. They put like the grommets behind the eardrums. They closed up the eardrums, and that was it. And then I remember waking up at like 2:00 in the morning. My mum wasn't around. She'd been sleeping in a side room where like a couple of the parents had been sleeping. But the one thing that caught my eye was this massive TV. It was like a massive CRT TV, and I don't know how the hell they got this CRT TV in there. It was just so big. Maybe it's because I was like 6-7 years old.
Yeah.
But it was massive. Anyway, the first thing I ever heard, it wasn't my mother's voice. It was Duck Hunt on the NES, right? So that's like the first proper thing I heard into my head was Duck Hunt playing away on the NES. And I didn't play it. I went over to it, and I remember just sitting there and just listening to it and looking at it, and obviously seeing the dog pop up and duck flying around, and I'd like noticed the gun on the floor, and then I started having a go. But ever since then, I just had just anything like I can play, anything I can do to make things in that I play. I want to do it.
That's amazing. That's like you've been predestined.
Yeah.
It's kind of inspiring, actually.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's amazing, and I love that the fact that your T-shirt is "I regret nothing." It's both very deep, meaningful for this podcast, but it's also, isn't that the tagline for one of the games you're working on, Postal 4?
Yeah. Postal 4. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it's in Postal 4. It's "I regret nothing."
Regret,
so they've misspelled regret.
They're playing,
but it's the tagline, yeah. I've got this, and I've got the. Oh yeah, I'm busy. Yeah, it's like I think it's about it's like 6 days a week at this point. But I always make sure that if my daughter comes home from school, I say hello to her, I ask her how day is, my wife comes in from work, I, meet her at the door, say hello, if I'm here, if I'm in Plymouth, I can't exactly but yeah, it's, even though I'm busy, I always try and make time for family. It's not like I come in here and I just hide away in this little man cave.
Levels flying out the
door.
Levels
like flying around, little geometrical shapes like floating in the
air. And you close your eyes, that's all you see, geometrical shapes.
Yeah.
So how long have you been working on Postal for?
So see, that is also a funny story with Postal 4. So I started working for them at the end of October last year. I originally applied for a lighting artist position that they had advertised, and I remember sending not like constantly, but like just sending an email every now and again to Josh, who's the lead, he's a lead there. I wasn't getting anything back, and I was just like, oh man, I haven't got it. Oh well, maybe next time. And then it's just like, I wonder. And I posted something. It was something like it was like an image from Operation Black Mesa on Twitter, and I was just like trying to get some feedback. So I was just trying to get my headspace out of it, really. And one of my Discord users, who had known I'd applied for Running with Scissors, quote tweeted and tagged Running with Scissors in it and gone, "You need to hire this guy." And they went, what's his email address? And I was just like, yeah, I sent an application, and then instantly I had an email back.
Oh wow, okay, cool.
It's like multiple subtle nudges, and then
just
pushed it over the
edge. And then I realized I started speaking to the Twitter account, who I then found out was Mike Jarrett, who's like the second in command there. And they'd already filled up the lighting artist position, but they were like, look, we're gonna set you up with a chat with Josh and John, who's like the producer, and just have a chat to see how it goes. So I was like, all right, awesome. So a week later, I'm having a chat with them, and then I think we spoke for like an hour and a half, like just about anything, literally like we're doing now, just shooting the breeze, right? And I remember getting off and instantly getting a message from Mike on Twitter, and it's just like, how do you think it went? I was like, yeah, it was really nice. It was really nice chatting to them. It was really cool. And he was like, do you want to work for us? I was like, yeah. I mean, it was like 11:30 at night at this point. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. So, instantly got like offered a position then and there. And I remember going into the bedroom because my wife was asleep at the time. She's like, wake up, wake up. Guess what's happened? And yeah, I've been working there since October last year. It's so funny working with them, and they're such a diverse bunch of people who are also a remote global team. There's people all over the world working for them. Really nice bunch of people.
And I think
amazing.
That sounds like great success. I mean, pandemic aside, if you've already set up to be a global team, you can hire the best from wherever, right? Even if it's in the middle of Dartmoor, mate.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any differences with working remotely for a team that already has had that set up before the pandemic?
No, I think it's been quite easy to slot in for them. I think what people have tend to find who were already working as part of a global remote team is they are too inclined to work outside of their hours, if you know what I mean. So it's like, because you're sat around, you're like, I'm at home, the pandemic's going on, I might as well just work. And it's like so there has been that barrier that's kind of been breached a lot, is where when you need to stop. Yeah, you need to stop, you need to take a break, you need to step back, you need to get obviously not go outside and breathe like any odd air, but just like take a breather and just kind of detach, because otherwise you start messing with other internal systems that we kind of don't really see going on, like like the circadian rhythm and stuff like that. So there's definitely been an easier integration during the pandemic, but there's also been that I'm sat at home during a pandemic, I've got nothing else to do, I might as well work, and that has kind of seen a domino effect in some areas. Not really so much with running with scissors. I think they had a bit more of a better control over it from the beginning, but especially within Tripmine Studios, you know, being such a inexperienced team, I would say, for that, it was, you know, you'd have people working until like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. It's like, go, just get some sleep, honestly, get some rest. You don't need to do this, you know.
And this is very difficult with distributed teams when they're globally distributed, because, you know, you're chatting with someone on whatever chat platform you have, Discord or whatever, and then you go like, wait a minute, isn't it like you're midnight, you know? Or isn't it like it might be 6 p.m. for me, but it's like, it's, you know, whatever time, it's 8 p.m. for you. Go to bed, you know, go or, well, not go to bed at 8 p.m, but go
get a break. Yeah, it is. Time zones are a nightmare, but it's, and there are times where you do cross over, but there are times where you kind of cross over one too many times, and you go, look, you know, like, you know, I appreciate you getting back to me now with the feedback, but it's like, you know, it's 2 a.m. in Washington, go to bed. Like, just get some rest, you know. I don't, you know,
or the other way around, like they're working during the day and you get sent a message and it's like maybe about the time that you're about to finish, but you're like, oh, it's just a 5-minute chat, and then 1 hour later you're still talking, and it's like, wait, no, it's
absolutely,
like, it's weird, right?
It is, so that is definitely like, it's, I mean, it's always down to that, isn't it? It's time. It's always that one point of reference for any issue that would come out. Is I've got too much time, so I'm going to use some of that time to work, or I haven't got enough time, so I'm just going to, you know, shrug it off. But I think that's the major thing I've seen for these remote teams is definitely the inability to kind of stop.
It's not easy, but I think you have to do it. You have to almost set like hard barriers for yourself, and I think like like a team or a studio, it also needs to acknowledge that kind of stuff, because like Valentina used the simple example there of, oh, it's, I don't know, it's 5 to 6, so let's say you're going to finish at 6, I'll have that 5-minute conversation, oh, it's 7 o'clock now, and as a one-off might not be so bad, but it all racks up if it happens again and again and again and again, right?
And I think, unfortunately, that can, it sounds like common sense, but I think it can just happen. And you might just need to establish rules or like guidelines or standards within like your team, because it might seem like so random, like, please don't text people after 6 o'clock or like stuff like that. But it's that it can contribute and can help, we hope, because we're all different, and like having some sort of like standard that can help.
It's like I went through phases of just reconfiguring like my notifications and availability on Slack, so it like always updates. So like when I'm done or I finish for the day, like it will block my notifications until a set time the next day.
Yeah,
I've got to say,
stuff
Slack
like
is
that.
a troll. Slack is a troll, right? Because like I put my notifications to off when I finish work, when I like, you know, log off. But for some reason it would instantly switch to my mobile and start pinging my mobile with everything.
I think that's an option you can set in Slack, actually. Once you move out of the desktop, it will start sending the notifications
like,
to your phone.
I'm like heading off. I'm like, oh no, you know you're not.
No.
I mean,
I'm going to follow you now.
I'm literally walking into another room, and I've had like 10 Slack messages like, no, I've finished. So like now I'm getting a lot better at like going like silence until tomorrow.
Just throw your phone out the window, like it's done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, expensive solution.
Just do that every day.
But it works. No, but you know what then happens? Like on my Apple Watch, it'll start pinging on my Apple Watch.
Oh no,
like,
technology.
Another thing flies out the window, and then I don't know, my Nest webcam starts pinging. And
if they start mailing you, that's gonna be like the line where you might need to move addresses, then it's like
like a carrier pigeon knocking on the window or something. It's just like, go away, I can't deal with this.
And then it'll like escalate to WhatsApp, for example. So,
just move services. Hi, we've infiltrated the WhatsApp service.
Can you just look at this now? Just look at this at this minute in time. Like, no, not at my computer.
No, I mean, you know, in ye olden days before pre-Slack, this would have been great as an email, because it means is an asynchronous communication, right? It's not like it's a chat left hanging. Discord annoys me because we do use it for work at the studio. Sorry, Valentina. But at least with Slack, I can go, remind me about this tomorrow. So yeah, so I've seen it, and I'm not going to process anything about it. I just say remind me about it tomorrow. But
yeah, I think Slack is much better for work-related stuff rather than
Yeah.
Discord, because that's more like for, I don't know, gaming and just community stuff, right? And Slack, you have, at least you can configure it to have the options that give you a bit more like freedom to do whatever you want to do, right?
But yeah, I mean, just email me. Send me a fax with your questions. And if you've enjoyed this episode, you can just fax
just
me.
telegram it over. Just more
Just telegram it. Like, stop, please do another episode on stop. What? Stop? What? That joke is for those people from the 1800s.
Oliver, I do have like a question about Postal actually. Have you played the previous games, and if there's anything you can tell us about the differences in regards to like level design with the new one? Is there something that's different or new that you're trying out with Postal? Stuff like that. If you can, obviously. Talk about it.
So yeah, I've played all the Postal games, including the one that they don't like to talk about. Because but yeah, so I played Postal 1, which is like an isometric sort of view.
Right, I think that's the one I might have seen.
Which it's great. It's a great little fun shooty blast everything game. Is the best way I can describe it, really. But Postal 2 is more, it was more sort of like this world, this breathing world that was kind of like there. And I think that's what we're trying to like recapture with Postal 4 is you have this world. Obviously level design does take a role in it. It's an open world game. I mean, obviously we're not going to be as slick and intricate in places as something like Grand Theft Auto, because at the end of the day, Running with Scissors is still a small independent developer. We don't have the manpower, the budget to create that sort of like scene, but we try to take a lot of time in making sure that every area has some life. It has maybe its own little story, or its own little resonance playing out, and that's something that's tried to be lifted from Postal 2. Postal 2 is like this, you could turn around a corner and someone would be like in their house, maybe picking their nose or something, and then you go to another house and someone might just be sat there like watching TV. Obviously you can go in and like bash the door down and start trashing the house up, but it was like it was this little breathing dysfunctional world. And Postal 4 is just trying to be that, but a lot bigger, because obviously we're using Unreal Engine 4 now. We have a lot more room to play with. That's another thing. Not a lot of people realize we actually use Unreal Engine because for some reason we can't use the Unreal Engine logo on the game. I don't know why that is, but yeah, so it's just, hopefully when you walk around the world, you get an idea of the history and all the little characters that live in amongst it and stuff. There's an area that I worked on, which is like the most worked on area that I've done so far for Postal 4, which is the Mexico. We split them up into tiles. It's the Mexico tile. And I had actually just been watching, is it Coco? Yeah, I've been watching that with my daughter, and it's all about obviously the afterlife.
Day of the Dead.
A very good movie.
Day of the Dead, yeah, and
it's
a really beautiful architecture in it, and really amazing set pieces. So obviously I'd been tasked with working on the Mexico tile, so I instantly started drawing inspiration from that. I started finding out about the architecture of it, and I bought a book that I started like reading, and I started like pouring through like how it's not just about this comes down into like set dressing now, but it's not just about how the building is, it's about how everything lives inside that space. Although you want it to be like an individual house for each person, because you want every person to be an individual in that space, things have to make sense, including like little there's like a little house I didn't know any